Hello, I am Judge Julie Field, and I am very excited to welcome everyone to our Thinking Boldly podcast. This is our periodic podcast where we talk to experts around the country, particularly of issues of importance to divorcing families and individuals, and just interesting topics that we want to discuss. I'm here with my partner and the co founder of the Consilium Institute, Heidi Webb. And we are very, very excited to have as our guest today, Dr. Barbara Provost. And I'd love to do a little bit more of an introduction, but just want to welcome Dr. Barb, if I can call you that,
Sure, that'd be great.
in our
Glad to
conversation.
be here.
We're so excited to have the opportunity to talk with you. So, Dr. Provost is the founder of Purse Strings LLC, but um, more than that, Dr. Barb is a force in the financial industry. I have to say, an educator, an entrepreneur, an advocate for women's financial power, and I know we'll be talking about that today, particularly as it impacts folks that are going through a divorce.
Mhm.
Um, Dr. Barb has over 20 years of experience as an educational consultant in the banking and insurance sectors. And you'll tell us more about this, I know, but it sounds like you saw firsthand how those male dominated industries consistently overlook the financial needs of women. Even though women control something like $24 trillion in wealth, um, the financial services market just wasn't responding to that, right? So
Mhm.
what you did, and you'll tell us more about this, is it sounds like you are armed with a doctorate in adult and higher education and advanced degrees in business and educational leadership. So you didn't just identify the problem, but you built the solution. And that is in 2015, Dr. Barb founded Purse Strings LLC, a first of its kind company dedicated to two missions: empowering women with free, high impact financial education so that they can take control of their financial futures no matter their starting point, and equipping financial professionals with the tools, insights, and training they need to serve the female market effectively, not just with sales pitches, but with real expertise and understanding. And your life motto, I love this, thank you for sharing it with us, is to be financially fearless.
Mhm.
So, Dr. Barb, welcome. So happy to have you here.
Oh, I'm honored to be here and share this space with the both of you and have this conversation. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. So, your bio talks about it a little bit, just sort of the impetus behind purse strings, but I'd like to hear that from a more granular level, from your perspective of what you saw, when you saw the problem, and how
Mhm.
you created that solution.
Sure. So as it said, I was an educator. I'm an educator, and worked in the financial industry. So I was building a lot of education for financial professionals around product and process, procedure, opening agencies, sales, hiring staff, leadership, all of that. And what I noticed was, first of all, a lot of the people coming through the door were 99% white males. And a lot of the sales process I would teach was very linear: find a suspect, make them a prospect, assess their gap, find a product, sell them the product, ask for a referral, move on to the next customer. And I saw it over and over. Of course, I was teaching it, right? Because that was the process they gave me to teach. And then I saw a lot of the products they were selling and a lot of the product materials. And over again, I thought, there's something wrong here because, first of all, I would never buy a product in that way. None of the product materials spoke to me. I would ask, like, who's this product for again? They'd say, well, for you or for me. And I looked at the photos on there. I looked at the messaging. It was very heavy in product speak. I couldn't really understand what they were saying. It was really written for more the financial professional than the consumer.
Mhm.
And I kept saying, I think you're missing a market here that, I don't think women would ever buy this way. And think about this, ladies. This was like 20, 25 years ago. And they were just telling me, I think we're doing fine. Just keep doing what you're doing. So I thought maybe it's just me. So I left that place of employment to open my own consulting practice and did the same similar work across different financial institutions. And what did I see? The same thing everywhere I went. Same linear process, same types of marketing materials. And I thought, this just doesn't feel right. And I would continuously say to leadership, why don't we bring in some kind of, selling to women seminars? And I'd create this content and they'd be like, I don't think we really need that. So, what happened was then I went through a divorce. And when I was navigating that divorce, I met other women in this small navigating divorce group. And they would say things like, gosh, I'm really concerned about how I'm going to afford to live on my own, how I'm going to budget. Should I keep my house? Do I need life insurance? And all these financial questions bubbled up. And these are bright, smart women who weren't even sure of how much money their husbands made. And so it was so interesting to me because, in my professional world, I saw what was going on. Now, in my personal world, I'm getting this whole different experience from other professional women. And then I'd grab my daughter, we'd run our errands on the weekend, and I'd see women in their little hairnets, retirement age, stocking the shelves in the fruit counter. I just saw the same woman last week. Or, bagging groceries. And I'd say to my daughter, what do you think these women really love, like the camaraderie of being out and doing some work? Or do you think they need the money for this work? And for the most part, she was like, "I don't know, mom, come on, let's go." But I'm still contemplating, like, why is this happening? So it was kind of like this trifecta of things that were going on. And so I commissioned a researcher to say, get 2 questions. Let's go deep on this. Let's answer what uh, is the financial industry doing today, if anything, to help women really learn how to be, you know, financially fearless, if you will, for retirement, and how are women feeling about being, you know, confident in their financial future? And it came back that the insurance and financial industry wins the award as being the least sympathetic to women and that women are woefully underprepared for their retirement. And I said, I knew it. I knew it, knew it, knew it. I could see it at every point and turn. So I thought, well, let me validate this. So again, grabbed my daughter, Maggie, and I said, let's go talk to women. So we held focus groups in women's homes, in the libraries, and different institutions. And we would just bring women together and say, hey, we're just curious. What's your experience working with financial professionals? It was fascinating. These women would just kind of look at us kind of with a blank stare, and they'd look around the room and they'd kind of shrug their shoulders and say, I don't know, Barb. They don't even look at me. And that was like a theme that ran across all of these focus groups, that they don't look at me. They never ask me any questions. I never go alone. If I go alone, I feel like prey, or they just want me to buy a product. And oftentimes I don't really understand what they want me to buy. I feel they just want my money. I don't trust them. And it was really quite sad. And I thought, well, ladies, let me tell you a little bit about this data. You're going to age alone, unfortunately. Chances are, with all the data that's out there, the average age of a widow is 59. The gray divorce is women in their 50s and 60s, of which I was one, are getting divorced at 3 times the rate. Women will outlive their spouses, and so you will be in charge of your finances at some point in time. So then women started leaning in, like, really? So I said to them, what do you need to feel both confident and competent to really take charge of your own financial future? And they said, you know, this is the laundry list they gave us. We want a place we can go, that we can learn what we need to know. We can ask questions without being talked down to. We can get really good answers that are explained to us without financial speak. We have data or information wherever we are in our financial journey. Some are divorced, some are widowed, some are starting to save, some are needing to pay down debt. And I'm like, I got you, right? I'm an adult educator. I've been in the financial industry. I can totally build that for you. And they'd say, and Barb, can you find financial professionals who really understand us, can really be kind of part of our financial team, will work with us, will help educate us, and kind of be part of our financial journey. Well, I've been in the financial industry a long time. I didn't see a lot of those people. So I said, that's going to be harder to do, but I'm going to do my best. So the model we built, we kind of say it's like a bicycle. We first and foremost give women free education tools, resources at every point in turn, wherever they are in their financial journey, so that they're armed with the right information and tools and resources they need. And then when they're ready to go through divorce, they're suddenly widowed, they get a windfall, they want to buy a second house, they need to pay down debt wherever they are, they can leverage our directory, our coveted directory of vetted financial professionals, and peruse that and work with any of the financial professionals that are in our directory and make an appointment to see them right there. And that's the model of purse strings.
So how do the women who are the professionals, I don't, they maybe aren't all women, but I would think a lot of the financial professionals who become part of your resources, your trusted sort of advisors of resources, are women. Am I correct about that? I guess I should ask first.
They are men and women.
Men and women. Okay. And how are you assured of their commitment to your model? And what's that like in terms of your engagement with them and how they sort of become part of your community?
Yeah, good question. So we don't take all comers. So we're really looking for financial professionals with three criteria. First and foremost, they have to understand the female market. So we have a conversation with every single person that is interested in joining us or learning more about the female market. And we know right out of the gate, we've talked to so many people, if they're telling us chapter and verse what they know about the female market, we know they know it, right? They know that women are coming into the large transference wealth, that the market's leaving $700 billion on the table today. They're giving us all the stats that we already know. They have programs that they're already reaching out. Maybe they're focusing on divorced women now because maybe they've gone through divorce. They did not have a good experience, so they've gone back and they've gotten their degrees, their certifications, and now they focus on helping women who are divorced. Those are the people that we really want to talk to and have as part of our community. We find them through places like LinkedIn. We get referrals from the people who are already in our community who know who we're looking for. We work with organizations like Women in Financial Services, those types of organizations where they're attracted to those like minded communities. And for those people who say, boy, Barb, I really want to learn how to engage with this market, but I'm not quite sure of the nuances around it. I teach a course called Reach, Engage, and Earn the Female Dollar that I created. And I actually created it for the World Bank when I was doing this work for them. And I've massaged it and made it my own so that we could teach it to financial professionals here in the United States, and they could learn and do their own assessment of their own business practices so that they too could learn how to reach and engage this market.
So is that something that Purse String offers to people who are part of the community, or is it's just sort of an optional, if you'd like to take this course, you can?
It's offered to anyone who really wants to understand and learn about how to serve the female market. If people want to come and join our community, many times we suggest they need to take that first before they join us. But if people are already honed in and they've written books on divorce or books on widowhood, they're already honed in and serving the market, they do not have to take the course.
Got it.
Mhm.
Got it. Great. And so, in terms of, I'm assuming this is people in the United States, but
Yeah.
maybe it's beyond that. So, are there particular states you focused on, or is it growing in a particular direction? And are people licensed state by state, or how does that work in terms of people who are wanting to hire someone from your
Sure.
First
Well,
Strings directory?
so our model at Purse Strings is we onboard any financial professionals who touch a financial transaction. So they could be financial professionals who are planners or advisors, and oftentimes they're licensed in multiple states. Some of them are licensed in all states. We are looking always for like estate planning attorneys because we so much, and you ladies know this well, want women to have their estate plans in order, but typically attorneys are licensed in one state, sometimes two. So we're always looking for estate planning attorneys. divorce attorneys as well. So because they're typically licensed in one state, we're always looking for that. Now, mediators are always a great option. They're usually across multiple states. So it depends on the type of profession they are in terms of their licenses. Like PNC agents are always great too. If you need your auto insurance or your homeowner's insurance, they're licensed in several states. But when you go to our webpage, our site, purstrings.co, every professional has their own webpage and it will tell you what states they're licensed in.
Got it. Got it. So if someone goes to the directory and they're in Minnesota, they can
They can
look
search
at
by
the
that.
directory and search. Yeah.
They can search right by their state. Yeah.
Okay. That's true. Good. Good.
Yeah.
Great.
So, a couple of the transition points in life that you talked about where women need this are widowhood and divorce. And I think that with divorce, especially, and that's the space that Heidi and I spend a lot
Mhm.
thinking about, it really has so many levels
Mhm.
of emotion and not just financial implications, which obviously are critical, but all of that gets so tied up in emotion and relationships and figuring out how to navigate restructuring the family after divorce. So talk a little bit about that and the gift that Purse Strings brings to folks that are going through that process.
So y- with divorce, it is so multifaceted and it's different for everybody. So when somebody comes to me or comes to Purse Strings and says, I'm going through divorce and I don't know where to start or something like that, we're not, myself nor my daughter, who's my business partner, are not certified divorce anything except we are Purse Strings founders. What we typically direct them to first is we do have a guide that's been proofed and validated. It's called How to Plan for Your Divorce Before You Mention the D Word. And it's just simply how to get all of your paperwork in order, anything that you're going to need in order, whether you're working with a mediator or an attorney. And then it also has a list of all the different financial professionals that you could possibly be working with, depending on your situation. And, there are more designations out there like the CDLP, Certified Divorce Lending Professional, which some people are not aware of, or the CDFA, Certified Divorce Financial Analyst. We have a lot of those as well. When to hire a mediator versus an attorney. So we're just giving them, kind of a task list of how to get your things in order. And then they can go to our directory. They can peruse for any mediators or attorneys that they can then go have conversations with. Um, and we also have a lot of divorce focuses on our podcast. So we have lots of conversations around different situations of women who have gone through divorce and what their situations were, or women. If I could share one amazing story of a woman who was in a very her husband made a lot of money. They had 4 children. She was super smart herself, but she was very trapped financially because he held all the funding very closely.
You help the purse strings.
She held the purse strings, right? And she did not have access, and she knew she needed to get out and didn't know how she was ever going to hire an attorney because he had access to all the money. And she's like, I'm looking down one day and thinking, tapping my fingers, thinking, how am I ever going to do this? And then she remembered her wedding ring had this huge rock. So she took her wedding ring to a jeweler and sold the diamond and got a cubit zirconia replacement. Isn't this brilliant? Got the cash for her diamond and was able to fund her divorce. And he never knew it because it looked like her diamond.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And I just thought,
That's
necessity
resourceful.
is the mother of invention.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. That is quite resourceful. Well, yeah. Yeah. Fascinating. Um, I think as Julie was saying, the complexities of emotion and finance and law and sort of their interconnectedness in divorce is indisputable. And I think one of the things that we know is that, creating clarity is an imperative to people being able to have the calm they need to proceed rationally. And unfortunately, for so many people going through divorce, they don't get that until very late in the process. And part of what you're doing at Purse Strings aligns so well with what we do as Concilium practitioners, which is really help build teams, financial people included, to give people that clarity at the outset so that they can proceed in a way that allows them to think logically and think clearly, and so that they can make decisions that obviously have long-term, lifelong impact. And if you're doing that in a state of, panic, you're really not able to do it in a way that's going to optimize your outcomes. So it's just such important work what you're doing, to enable people to do that.
Yeah, and it goes hand in glove with what you're doing. I mean, the finances are the foundation,
Mhm.
and a lot of the messages I hear professionals in the area say are, "Don't rush through it, work with the right professionals, and let's not argue for, $100,000 over something that's worth $100." You know what I mean? Let's make sure that, it's fair and equitable without it being, over the top. I mean, we've all heard it. You guys have heard it. Ladies have heard it millions of times, the horror stories. Um,
Mhm.
our intention is make sure you have all the facts and the information and you're working with really good professionals. Um, don't rush through it in the sense that don't make rash decisions, make educated decisions with the right professionals by your side.
Yeah. And it's just, unfortunately, for so many people, the process of divorce is upside down. It's we go through all the machinations without all the information, or you don't acquire the information until late into the process, and then are feeling diminished in so many ways, emotionally, financially, depleted assets. I mean, there are so many things that handicap people at that juncture, as opposed to starting where you are and saying, line up, your ducks and understand the lay of the land, and you'll be in a much better position. And by doing that, you advantage people enormously. And as you said, it aligns so well with what we're doing. And, I think it's just dovetails, really, really beautifully.
Yeah. I think it's because they they fight about the money, right? They fight about the stuff and it's emotional, right? And it might not be about the stuff. It might be about I'm really resenting you right now, so I'm going to make it about the money. You know?
Right,
Yeah.
right.
I've been working
Yeah.
with somebody. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Heidi.
No, I was just gonna been saying I've been working with somebody for close to a year actually on what we call the anti-concilium case, because it emanates back to a 2007 divorce, which is insane. But these people have literally been, you know, I can't say they've been fighting the entire 18 years, but they've been in discord for the entire 18 years. And very little of it has to do, it's sort of like cloaked in finances, but it's all about the emotion. And it was never really attended to properly, at the beginning. And it's almost like, a wound that festers and becomes infected. And then you're just trying to, heal it forever, as opposed to like getting to it at the beginning and, getting out whatever the problem is and really addressing it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Another thing that we talk a lot about and are not afraid to bring up is prenups.
Mhm.
You
Good.
know, that prenups, it's not a dirty word. It doesn't mean I don't love you, but having a really good understanding going into your marriage um, will help um, clear the air in many, many ways. What are your thoughts on that?
I think prenups are, I always talk about them as, if you can't talk about money when you're getting married, that's not good.
Mhm.
That's, even if you decide between the two of you that a prenup's, for whatever reason, not what you want to do, you should have a fair and full financial disclosure at the beginning and not have any surprises. So if you go into it and then say, I knew you had those college loans, or I didn't know you had those college loans, or, whatever the, misunderstanding was at the beginning, credit card debt. I mean, these kinds of things that people think that they don't need to disclose, or they don't think to disclose, or they think it'll be uncomfortable, or whatever the parameters are. And obviously, if there's a great deal of family wealth, to not have a conversation about that, whether or not that's something someone assumes they'll have access to, or they assume, they won't. And, I think either way, if you're building a life with somebody, you need to address those issues and those dynamics
Mhm.
before you like talk about, place settings and the flowers. But rarely, that's usually people's focus is like, oh, but who's the band gonna be? And I mean, not that those things aren't fun to think about, but, it's really great if you can sort of get everything else done first.
Mhm. Well, and it's so steeped in all of this traditional, old cultural norms at one time where we don't talk about money. It's impolite. No, we're not going to even discuss it. We're just going to make a lot of grand assumptions about it. And, this whole idea of the traditions around having a wedding, it wasn't discussed. And that's why our podcast is called Women in Money, the Shit We Don't Talk About, because it's gotten women in so much trouble, relationships in so much trouble, because nobody learned how to talk about money. Nobody learned how to open the dialogue. Nobody learned to say, I made some mistakes because I just didn't know, and now I have a lot of credit card debt and I don't know what to do or how to seek help, or they feel guilt, they feel shamed. They're afraid to mention it to someone. And really, we need to just put that at the door and say, this is a problem we can solve. It's solvable. Let's figure it out and let's solve it and let's move on and let's learn from it. Because with all of this stuff that's been shoved under the rug, or the shame and the guilt so many women feel about money, that's why they're not going to talk about it. And then even financial professionals will say to me, Barb, the number of women who are so professional women leading big organizations, and yet they still give their paycheck to their husband and don't know about the money.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I said, it's such a dichotomy when you think about it.
Yeah.
And
And there's yeah.
And we just don't know why that tradition continues, or why we're all of a sudden we're like, we get married and we're like, here, I know nothing about money all of a sudden. But it's we have to start talking about this and having these conversations.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
I think there is a lot in our society. There's a lot of, financial ignorance on the part of people, right? And part of that, I think, you've already alluded to, where there's like this secret language that the financial professionals use, and sort of unpacking that is one piece. But it's also, like you said, we don't want to talk about money. And I think do you see that more with women, that reticence to talk about money, or that lack of knowledge is at a higher level in women because of the expectation societally that, oh, women will be taken care of and everything will be fine.
I see that in an older generation. It's changing a little bit.
Mhm.
Not as much as I would hope to see, but there's a large part of the generations that think, a man is my plan. And then realizing, uh-oh, I was wrong. Now he's got a younger model and I need to go find a job. That's a sad state of affairs, and it happens far too often.
there was actually a study done at Harvard Business School, and it was a while ago, so it's dated, but I thought it was fascinating because this was, say, within the last 10 or 15 years, when there were, a good percentage, maybe even 50% of the class were women. Um, but when you looked at how many of them went into finance versus how many of them went into marketing, the vast majority, I think it was close to 90% of the women were going into marketing or consulting or something that wasn't hard finance. And when they clearly they'd had the same, GRE scores that got them into Harvard Business School. And they clearly had the math skills and what was required to be in finance, but they were deferring in many instances when they were asked who they consulted with about finance. It was my father, my brother, my uncle. Oh, what does your father do? Oh, he's a fireman. And what does he know about finance? Well, I don't know, but he's my dad. Like, he's got to know about money, and it was sort of this crazy dichotomy because there they were, and they clearly knew or could know or have more access to information, but that's not the way it went sort of in the social hierarchy.
Mhm.
And I think that's,
Mhm.
a fascinating thing. And, you've clearly hit on something, and that makes all the sense in the world. And women, to sort of grab the reins and say, I want to know this, I need to know this, and I will know this is, it requires redefining how we see ourselves.
Yeah, and the industry, the financial industry is a male model built by men for men to sell to men, and maybe the reason the fathers told them that to go into marketing was they didn't want their daughters to be in that kind of shark-infested waters, which is a really, really tough place to be, and a lot of women who've gone in there, not many, even today, feel like they can stay because that model is hard to even navigate today because it hasn't changed as much, and yet we need more women in the industry. Women are fantastic financial advisors. They're fantastic at building relationships, at building webs of really reaching out and really having the empathy and understanding of what women want and need, and women are the most wealthiest, powerful market. That's the ones that you wanna get in front of, and yet so many financial professionals are turning women off and just by their kind of mansplaining and um, you know the way that they're treating their female clients, women do not trust them.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how many women, though, have the courage to walk out of that office, right? When they're being mansplained to. I just was talking with a colleague of mine, and she said she was being mansplained to a banker, and she said, "Thank you very much. I'm taking all my money out of your bank. Goodbye." And he was shocked, right? Because he was talking in his vernacular, in his language, and he couldn't believe that some little old lady was going to, just walk out of it, be financially fearless, as Dr. Barb is encouraging people to be, and just walk out of the office, so
And he probably had no understanding why she left.
right.
And that's what I teach in my course. Like, women will nod and smile, and they think, "Oh, she's happy. She's
Captive.
good with
Right.
me," right? And then they never come back, and they can't understand why. And it's probably because you didn't listen to one iota, gave her a chance to say anything, even asked her a question about what is it that she wanted and needed.
That's exactly right.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Their experience. So when people think about financial professionals, a lot of times they think, "Oh, maybe I don't really qualify for that, or maybe I don't really need that. I'm not making that much money, or we don't have that much money in assets. We've got my work 401(k), but that's about it." It seems to me that people can benefit from this knowledge and these insights and this advice regardless of their socioeconomic level. Is that your experience as well?
I believe so. Everybody's situation is different. Like someone will say, well, if I have student loans and I don't have a really big, emergency fund, should I save for my emergency fund or pay down my loans? And, just asking a question like that is going to be, it depends, right? Because we have to look at your whole picture. Do you own a home? What other loans do you have? What are your goals? There's a lot more to it, and you need to look at the bigger picture. Also on our site is we have financial professionals who work with people who start with 0 to 10,000 for an investment, 10 to 20, 20, 20 to 30. Some who start at 250 and up, some 500 and up, some a million up. So every professional has their starting point. So women can come in. One of the biggest questions women say is, I don't really make that much money. I don't have a lot to invest. They don't really want me as a customer. I don't think I have enough. Maybe, maybe not, but look at our website because there are plenty professionals that say, I'd be happy to start working with you. Let's say you have 5,000 to invest. Okay, let's get started, but let's look at your whole picture and build a plan out so we can start saying, where are you at today? Where do you want to be in a year, 3 years, 5 years? And make sure you have a plan going forward. Because even I was talking to a woman, a young professional who said, I've been in the business 5 years. She's a financial professional, and she's like, "A lot of my friends are graduating medical school. They have a lot of debt, but I know eventually they're gonna be making some really good money, so I'm happy to start with them even though they have a lot of debt because the payoff is gonna be pretty great down the road," right? And that's true with a lot of people. You need to start with some of the smaller accounts because you know there's potential down the road. Everyone wants to get the whale, right?
Well, I think there are different needs on both ends. It's like the financial professionals need to build their portfolio.
Yeah.
They're going to have assets
Mhm.
under management at some point, which isn't when they're 30 necessarily.
Right.
But I think by the same token, the person who isn't earning great wealth at that point they have different needs than someone who's going to be managing assets under, a great amount of assets. But creating that plan and being able to work that plan with someone who's going to grow with you is just as valuable, perhaps more valuable than someone who's just going to take a percentage on,
Exactly.
gain, so
And I think, if somebody's just starting out, maybe they just get married, they're gonna have a family, maybe they have a condo, they're gonna move to a house, right? They're gonna, have more children, they're gonna have more income, they're gonna have more financial needs, they're gonna need life insurance, they're gonna need more financial products and services. You wanna be kind of in their financial hip pocket as they come to you and say, "Hey, we're thinking about getting a summer home. What do you think?" Or now we're having a second baby. Should we get a 529 plan? Should we up our life insurance? You want to be that advocate for them as their life gets bigger and larger and more robust for them. And, my wife's going to leave her job. And what's the impact of that? Let's work through the numbers because you're making big financial choices, but you need to work through the numbers and the impacts of what those numbers are and make adjustments, right? So I think it's always a good idea to find that person who's going to navigate life with you as you grow your life and make changes accordingly.
yeah, I love your, being financially fearless because I think with so much of what I see with people who haven't addressed their financial needs and have just sort of like coasted along, and then they get to the point where they're getting divorced or they're thinking about getting divorced. And there's so much fear and anxiety because they don't have a picture of what their finances look like. And, at that juncture, it's really critical that they get a grip on that before they file for divorce because even if they're not going to be together, they know their assets and they know their assets that are joint at that point and how those get divided and how they get, whether or not someone has a pension or is just going to have social security or what this will look like in the future matters, and a lot of the anxiety and anger and acting out in divorce comes from a lack of knowledge and a lack of security.
Right.
And I think,
Fear.
yeah, it's fear.
Yeah.
And it's that lizard brain just jumping in there, and what do? You fight fight
Yeah.
flight or freeze. And I think you see all of that in divorce, but none of it usually is effective.
And knowledge is power because if you put those numbers together and you start looking at your spending, because some people don't even know how to rein in spending or what that spending means. We talk a lot about being financially conscious and spending with your values and, you know, what's really important to you in your life. And, is it important to keep up with the Joneses? And you know what I mean? And I work that through with my daughter, and it's r there's so much coming at us from marketing, from social media, from this and that and the other thing, but the reality is when you pull back, really, is that all that important? I mean,
I
you
think
r
it's fascinating for people when they start tracking their spending to see, then that much at Starbucks and that much at, it's just sort of interesting, small things. But and I always say to people, it paints a picture of who you are, money, or what you value. I shouldn't say who you are, but what you value, how you spend. So if, and a lot of times you see in divorce, you see, wow, I didn't realize I was spending that much on alcohol or at the
Yeah.
dispensary or, whatever these things are. It's like, yeah, that's what you're doing. Or shopping, just clothes. It's like all the things that are what people do when they try to feel better, shows up in their
Mhm.
monthly statement. You
It
know,
and even if you dig deep, even dial that back into, like, where does that come from? Like, where does those spending habits and those feelings and thoughts about money come from? And when you think about when you were growing up, for instance, I'm one of 13 children.
wow.
Yeah. So think about it. We did not have a lot, right? So we had exactly what we needed and not much more. And my husband is one of 3 children who, went had all of the things he needed and then some. So he spends money a lot more freely than I do. And I'm always like, "Well, do we need that?"
Right.
Because
Right.
my knee-jerk
No.
reaction is much different.
Right. And that, also plays out in divorce. I always say to people,
Yeah.
divorce looks just like the marriage in many ways. And so when people don't have insight into their family of origin or their spouse's family of origin in terms of how that impacted the decisions they made, it also isn't great because it's a great predictor of how people will say, yeah, yeah, she can have that. I don't worry about money, says one person, so it's not a big deal to me to let go of that. Whereas to someone else, it's like I hold really tightly to everything because I never know where my next meal is coming from.
Mhm.
It's a very different mindset. And it
Yeah.
are very different decisions.
Yeah, and it's good fodder for discussion before you get married. I mean, how do you feel about money? Like, how was money decisions discussed in your family? Was it discussed? The interesting thing was my father watched the market every day. He was not in financial services, but the market
Hmm.
ticker was always on the TV. So
Interesting. Yeah.
I always knew the market was important to invest in and that was important to watch, even as a little girl. And, like, some people probably never knew what the market was, but I just grew up seeing it, which is so interesting it was, like, normal for us.
Yeah.
So
It's neat for me, actually. It's fascinating. My father really loved investing. And for him, it was sort of fun to teach how money could grow, like just on the back of a napkin. Like, do
that's
I
awesome.
do this for 7 years? Your money will double. And,
Right?
like that, sort of explaining those concepts really young, I guess made me conscious of it.
Mhm.
Um, but for sure, a lot of people don't do it.
And another question we ask, which I think is real interesting, just if you're having questions around the dinner table is, what is the amount of money that you would wait to spend before you asked your partner to spend it? Like, would you spend
Oh, that's interesting.
$2,000, like if you were out shopping on something, or would you say, before I spend that amount of money, I'm gonna have a discussion with my partner on that." You know what I mean? Because I was at a dinner table one time where, somebody across the table made a $20,000 decision on a phone call without consulting his wife, and I was like, "Wow, that's a big number to make a decision on without asking your partner." But everybody has their own limit,
Yeah.
you
Right.
know?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, that's
interesting.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
very
That is
interesting.
really interesting.
Yeah, it's really, really interesting.
Yeah. My number has a lot fewer zeros than the one you just described.
Mine does too. Mine does too. But I'm
So
not a big spender.
yeah,
Yeah,
so
I know.
Purse Strings is 10 years old. So, right? Founded in 2015. So, what's the future? What's the future of, Purse Strings? What's next?
So purse strings, like any business that, is created from a seed. I mean, it's not been a franchise. Nobody gave us the how-to booklet, right? It ebbed, it flowed. It went up, it went down, and it was really hit the ground running in 2020 full time because it was a model just being built and tested prior to that. But since 2020, when I onboarded and asked my lovely daughter, who then graduated with her MBA, the one that was my little scribe during the focus groups,
She
she
was
finished.
listening.
Yeah,
You
she's.
may not have said she was, but she was
Oh,
listening.
she had a lot of questions about why people would give their money to someone who didn't look at them. But she finished her MBA at Loyola and was looking for a job. Of course, it was COVID. And I said, why not just, I'm going to close my consulting business because that kind of dried up at the same time. I said, do you want to just jump in and do purse strings with me? And she said, sure, let's do it. So we have really created a solid foundation with all of our education and our website and all the pivots around making sure it's really strong and effective and functional and easy for women to find, and all the education that we built, our podcast, all our social media. We have over 150 professionals right now. We're engaged with lots of different broker dealers. So we're just ready to take off now and really grow. We're across the country, acknowledged across the country, but our growth is that we really want to be the household name for when women need to make any kind of financial transactions or choices. They're not going to Facebook and asking, does anybody know of a good attorney? Because I'm thinking I might need to go through a divorce. But they're just saying, oh, just go to purse strings. Just go to their vetted, directory of financial professionals. You can go peruse all the different professionals on there. They've been vetted, and you can make an appointment right from their site and, have a complimentary visit with any one of them and select. Or go there and find, the resources that you need, the guides that you need, listen to their podcasts, listen to some of their, go to their social media. We have tons of stats, things like that. It's the go-to resource for women when you have any kind of financial decision or direction that you need to make.
That's amazing. Good for you.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
very
This is
exciting.
exciting.
We're not there yet, but we're in that direction.
Exactly. Have your vision set. I
Yes,
love
we
that.
do.
I
And
love
you're
that.
fearlessly carrying it out. So if people want to know about purse strings, if they want to find you, what's the best way?
Well, right at our site, pursestrings.co, and it's .co, not .com, because when we started pursestrings.com was $85,000 to purchase that URL.
Oh, wow.
And we're bootstrapped, so we took the .co, but that's okay. And then all of our social media is Purse Strings Co. So you can find us on social media that way. Join our newsletter, listen to our podcast, and peruse our directory and leverage some of our financial professionals at any point in time that you need to make a financial decision. Yeah, and tell your friends and your aunts and your sisters and your moms and any females that you know out there that want to know about purse strings.
Love that. Love that. Well, we will put it on the air with this podcast and
Yay!
blast it into the ether.
Yes,
And I love I just feel like there's such alignment between what you're doing and what we're doing, and
yes.
empowering people to live their best lives, is there's no reason not to do that.
Yeah, and it's, I always say women build webs of influence. So it's all of us and all of you coming together and providing all of our gifts, bringing it together, sharing it with the world, with women to help one another, make really good, smart choices as they're working through a really difficult time like divorce.
100%. Yeah. Well,
Mhm.
and I love that you've personally taken your own experience and your own journey and, used it as a springboard. I know we started with purse springs as a mistake, but was it was a springboard of sorts for you to really grow something that's just giving back in such wonderful ways. So
Thank you. Yeah, it's a mission of love, but I think it's one that um, all women can jump in on, and really we're helping one another as well.
100%.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, Dr. Barb, thank you so much for your time today. And we're just so excited that we had the opportunity to meet you and chat with you about the important resource that you've created. And I know that I will go into my next chapter of my life being financially fearless
Yay!
conversation. So thank you so much for that.
Oh, love it.
Love it. Well, yeah, and more partnership opportunities to come with all of us.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree. This
Yeah,
collaboration is key.
that's for
Absolutely.
sure. Thank
All
you,
right.
ladies.
All right. Thank you.